Have you ever looked at a woman who lives alone, no boyfriend, no partner, and wondered why? Not out of pity, not out of curiosity, but because something about her unsettles you. Maybe she's not heartbroken, not unlucky, not even searching. Maybe, just maybe, she chose it. And that simple, radical decision flips everything we've been taught upside down. Because when a woman chooses to be alone, she's not disappearing, she's arriving. Not into someone's arms, but into her own life. And that kind of arrival doesn't get celebrated. There are no applause tracks, no congratulatory posts, just silence. A silence so deep, it echoes with strength most people will never understand that she's not cold. She's just no longer burning for people who never intended to warm their hands by her fire. She's not lonely, she's selective. And in a world that rushes women into relationships as if singleness is a defect, her stillness feels like rebellion. You see, when a woman stops waiting to be saved, it threatens a system built on control. It dismantles the myth that she needs someone else to feel whole. It terrifies those who still equate love with possession and shakes the core of a culture obsessed with emotional dependency. Carl Jung once said, "Everything we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow." And these women, the ones walking alone but not lost, they're the mirror, the shadow of the collective, the embodiment of all the dreams we fear to live. They aren't loud about it. They don't preach. They simply exist, and their existence is a quiet revolution. They aren't performing. They're preserving. They're not looking to charm a prince. They're looking to protect their peace. And yes, that makes people uncomfortable, because while the world screams, "Hurry, find someone," she whispers back, "I already found myself." The woman who lives alone isn't playing the same game. She's not begging. She's choosing. She doesn't need to be liked. Her presence is enough. And that's exactly why she draws criticism, confusion, and judgment. Because people don't know what to do with a woman who no longer craves external approval. They try to label her too proud, too picky, emotionally damaged. But the truth is, behind her quiet life is a loud presence. A presence that doesn't shrink to fit the narrative. A presence that dares to be whole. She doesn't want just any kind of love. She wants love that expands her, not one that cages or consumes. And until that love comes, if it ever does, she chooses herself over and over again. Not out of bitterness, but out of loyalty to her soul. You may not understand her yet. You may think this is all just bravado, a mask for heartbreak. But deep inside, some part of you hears it. That little whisper, what if this is what real love looks like? The kind that starts with you. Her solitude isn't emptiness. It's a sanctuary. A sacred space she built not to keep people out, but to keep herself in. And yes, it's misunderstood. Society sees a woman alone and assumes she's cold, distant, or broken. But the truth? She's just finally intact. Jung said, "Everything we do not face in ourselves, we project onto others." Maybe that's why so many still confuse solitude with absence. But for her, solitude is soil, rich with growth. While others look outward to be filled, she turned inward to face the ghosts no one wants to meet. Childhood wounds, abandoned hopes, attachments dressed as love. Her decision to walk alone wasn't made from pain, but from healing. A scar, not a wound. She didn't stop believing in love. She stopped accepting what others called love when it only ever made her feel small. She knows chaos. She's loved until she disappeared, given until she had nothing left. She's begged for crumbs she should never have had to ask for. But somewhere along the line, she woke up. And that awakening didn't come like lightning. It came slowly, like sunrise after too many nights. What you see now, it's not coldness, it's maturity. And maturity is terrifying because it asks for truth, for presence, for depth. She doesn't want flattery, she wants reciprocity. She's not swayed by promises. She's drawn to real presence. That's why she seems unreachable to so many. Because charm can't touch her anymore. Words can't deceive her. She doesn't want to be saved, she wants to be seen. And that requires courage. Because to truly see her, you have to see yourself too. Most people can't go that deep. They'd rather stay where it's light and safe. Not because she's difficult, but because she's whole. And when a woman becomes whole, she splits the world in two. Those who admire and those who fear. Those still living in emotional halves can't comprehend her completeness. She doesn't want to complete anyone. She wants to overflow with someone who's done their own work. Until then, she walks alone. Not because she has to, but because it's the only way she stays true, that she's not isolating, she's preserving. And there's a world of difference. But that nuance is lost in a society that still idolizes coupledom like it's a badge of worth. Carl Jung also said, where convention rules, there is little room for authenticity. And she doesn't follow convention. She follows her essence. When they tell her, you're too picky, or no one's perfect, she smiles. That slow, steady, almost amused smile. Because what they call picky, she calls standards. Standards she earned, not out of arrogance, but out of years of trial and tears. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for alignment with someone who's met themselves in the dark, who's done the healing, who knows how to love without destroying. And let's be honest, that's not easy to find. She makes people uncomfortable, not by what she says, but by what she represents. She is living proof that happiness doesn't require someone else's arms to feel real. That peace can live within, not despite the silence, but because of the insecure, she's threatening. To the unhealed, she's confusing. But she's not trying to confront anyone. She's just being. And her very being is a mirror, brutal and beautiful, to those still lost in their chains, that she's not rushing. She doesn't scramble to fill silence with meaningless company. She honors her own pace. And in a world that thrives on urgency, that alone makes her a target. Society wants quick fixes, instant validation, attention at all costs. But she wants depth. While others chase distractions, she craves presence. While most post curated moments online, she chooses the raw, the real, the moments no one claps for. She wants a soul bond, not a storybook ending. So when she says no, it's not a game, it's truth. When she walks away, it's not drama, it's defense. When she stays in rather than go out with someone who doesn't see her, it's not pride, it's clarity. And that clarity, it was paid for in full. Through pain, through surrender, through letting go of identities that were never hers to carry. Now, she doesn't live to please. She lives to be. And in a world built on performance, that kind of presence is revolutionary. That's why people call her dangerous. Not because she harms, but because she no longer conforms. Because she's found a peace that doesn't need validation and that threatens the system. It's not her solitude that unsettles people. It's her self-containment, the quiet strength of a woman who belongs to herself. Jung once said, "Those who look outward dream. Those who look inward awaken." That's exactly what she did. She took the long road inward. She peeled off layers, faced old fears, sat in silence until the silence became a friend, not a threat. She met herself in her darkest places and returned, not broken, but whole. She no longer sees herself through the gaze of others. She sees herself clearly, steadily, with unwavering eyes. And that changes everything. How many times have you felt like being alone was a failure? How often have you felt like you had to explain why you're still single? She's been there too. She once believed something was wrong with her, that she was too much, too intense, too complicated, but eventually she realized it's better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. In that day, she made a quiet promise to herself. Never again will I shrink for love. Never again will I beg to belong. Her path isn't without pain. There are days of doubt, nights of nostalgia, moments when the silence feels a little too loud. But the strength that rises from within is real. And it grows with each act of self-honoring that she's learned that true love doesn't ask you to vanish. It doesn't demand you hide your fire. The love she wants doesn't clip wings, it lets them stretch. It doesn't consume, it creates space. And until she finds that kind of love, she continues to become the kind of woman who can receive it. Not out of pride, but out of integrity. She is in every sense the embodiment of what Carl Jung called individuation. She has walked the spiral staircase inward, faced her shadow, descended into her own underworld, and come back stronger, clearer, more her than ever. She will never again accept a relationship where she has to shrink to fit. She doesn't want to be completed. She wants to be met fully, fiercely, and honestly. That's intimidating because it demands emotional responsibility. It asks someone to stand in front of her without armor or mask. And let's be real, many aren't ready for that. Many still love from fear, from need, from lack. So if she walks alone today, it's not because she couldn't find love. It's because she learned the difference between attention and intention, between closeness and connection, between desire and depth. Every step she takes now is deliberate. Every no she speaks is an act of self-respect. Every distance she maintains is sacred. She doesn't need to prove her worth, not to anyone. And that quiet certainty, that clarity, it rearranges the energy of every room she walks into. She is not the same woman who once begged to be seen. Something inside her cracked wide open. It was that break that set her free. Because sometimes freedom only comes in the collapse. Jung said, "The tree that grows to heaven must have roots that reach down to hell." And she's been there. She knows what it's like to face the inherited pain of generations, to carry traumas that didn't even start with her. She's had to unlearn the stories women have been told for centuries, that they must earn love by sacrificing themselves. She broke the cycle. She said no to every pattern that tried to repeat itself. And when she stopped settling, the world tried to gaslight her, tried to tell her she was being too much, too hard, too unrealistic. But she stood her ground, first with trembling hands, then with a calm heart, and now with unshakable dignity. Because when you've survived your own abyss, the absence of others doesn't scare you anymore. She's learned how to sit with herself, to listen, to nourish, to thrive in stillness. She's not unreachable. She simply no longer allows herself to be touched by what isn't true. There's a difference between being open and being exposed. And she knows it. She opens, yes, but only for the real, not for sweet words or performance. She's seen enough to tell the difference. Her intuition has become sharp. Her energy, protective. She can sense falseness from miles away. And when something lacks soul, she doesn't argue. She just walks away. Her transformation isn't surface level. It's archetypal. She tapped into something ancient, some deep, wild memory that women weren't made to serve, but to express. Not to be edited, but to overflow. And in touching that memory, something woke up inside her, a wild woman. Fierce, free, emotionally sovereign. A woman who may be alone, but is never lost. She is in communion with something greater, her own becoming. And no label can define her now. Cold? No. She just refuses to chase warmth that burns. Difficult? No. She's discerning. Distant? No. She simply knows her worth. She doesn't chase. She doesn't audition. She doesn't beg to be chosen. She chooses, and that shift, that reversal of power, it confuses those who still believe a woman's value lies in her ability to be needed. But she's no longer playing by those rules, that she's already crossed the threshold. And on the other side, she found something the world still can't name. A relationship with herself that is whole, sacred, and unshakable. There's something sacred about the way she walks through life now. She doesn't need to announce herself. Her energy arrives before her words ever do. Her confidence is quiet, and in that silence, her true strength lives. Carl Jung once said, "Everything we face within eventually becomes our destiny." And maybe that's why this woman, by choosing herself again and again, has become the architect of a life few understand, but many secretly admire. She no longer tries to patch her emptiness with promises or contort herself to fit into someone else's expectations. She no longer begs for space in anyone's story, because she's learned presence should never be begged for. It should be invited. And if that invitation doesn't come from a place of authenticity, she doesn't force it. She simply bows out, not with bitterness, not with anger, but with the graceful dignity of someone who's been lost before and refuses to be lost again. People don't always see the full picture. They think she's hardened, but the truth is, she still longs for love. She still yearns to be touched, to be chosen, to be held. The difference now is she wants it without losing herself, because she spent too many years trying to shrink her soul into spaces too small. She's twisted, bent, and buried parts of herself just to keep peace. And now, finally, she's done. She only brings her full self into spaces that honor it. She offers her heart only where her wholeness is welcome. Not because she's arrogant, but because she knows what it costs to come back to herself. And that kind of love she's holding out for, it's not fairy tale love. It's not grand gestures and photo ops. It's something quieter, deeper, a soul alliance. A connection where neither person has to dim their light. Where both can be fully human, flawed, vulnerable, real, and still be loved. That kind of love requires maturity. It requires shadow work. It requires truth. It's not built on possession or fear. It's built on respect, depth, and presence that some. This sounds like she's asking for too much. But really, it's the bare minimum. She'd rather wait a lifetime than settle for emotional crumbs. And if that makes her intimidating, so be it. Because this isn't about playing small anymore. It's about choosing real that we are watching the rise of a new archetype. A woman who no longer sees her singleness as a problem to be solved. A woman who's no longer flattered by being desired. She wants to be respected. A woman who walked away from what looked like love because it required the erasure of her soul. She didn't give up on love. She just realized that real love never asks you to abandon yourself. And when that clicked, her world changed. She doesn't need to raise her voice to be heard anymore. Her presence speaks volumes. She walks into a room, and something in the atmosphere shifts. Not because of how she looks or what she says, but because of what she radiates. This isn't mysticism. It's energy. It's the weight of someone who has done the brutal, beautiful work of facing herself and coming back whole. She didn't conquer every fear. She learned to walk with them. She didn't eliminate her shadows. She integrated them. She no longer divides herself into the parts people prefer. She brings her full self, unedited. She doesn't reject love. She just refuses to participate in imbalanced relationships where only one person gets to shine. She doesn't want a savior. She wants a witness. Someone to stand beside her, not above her or beneath her. She knows now that the right love won't demand perfection. It will celebrate her as both storm and stillness, laughter and tears, shadow and light. Because real love doesn't fear the messy. It meets it. She's too whole to accept halves, too free to fall for disguised cages, too emotionally awake to tolerate the shallow, and still strong enough to walk this path even when it hurts, even when it gets lonely, even when people misunderstand. Because that's the journey of an awakened soul. She's given up the fast dopamine of quick approval for something deeper, something slower, something true, and that terrifies the world. Because a woman who doesn't need, a woman who doesn't bend, who doesn't beg, is a threat to the systems that rely on her compliance, to the unhealed patterns that taught her she had to earn love, to the silent rules that said her worth was tied to whether someone else claimed her. But she broke those rules. She rewrote the narrative. And in doing so, she sparked something dangerous. Hope. Hope for the women who are just waking up. For the ones still whispering to themselves, there must be more than this. She doesn't lead them. She doesn't preach. She simply walks her truth and lights a path. Some days she cries. Some days she celebrates. But every day, she walks forward. Not toward someone, but toward herself. Because now she knows she is not alone. She is with herself. And that, after everything, is more than enough. The love that comes after that, it won't be salvation. It will be celebration. It won't complete her. It will amplify her. When a woman chooses to walk alone, the world rushes in to convince her she's wrong, that she's cold, broken, hard to love. But inside her, something else rises. Something ancient. A knowing not born from rebellion, but from wisdom. The same wisdom Carl Jung called individuation, the sacred process of becoming wholly yourself. And when that happens, when a woman reclaims her truth, her rhythm, her soul, nothing outside of her holds more power than what pulses within. She doesn't have to shout it. You'll feel it when she quietly closes a door that no longer serves her. You'll see it when she smiles, not to impress, but because she's at peace. You'll sense it when she chooses silence over noise, solitude over shallow company. She knows now, being alone isn't a failure. It's a vow of loyalty to her own soul. And the soul of a woman who has awakened doesn't submit, doesn't shrink, doesn't be it simply is. And that is enough. The world will keep trying to convince her she's missing something. It will keep offering counterfeit love, empty distractions, plastic promises. But she's already seen behind the curtain. She knows it's not about finding someone. It's about never losing herself again. And when that truth takes root, everything changes. Desire becomes discernment. Loneliness becomes liberation. Waiting becomes becoming. And what once wounded now teaches. What once confined now sets free. Maybe something stirred in you while hearing this. A quiet ache, a forgotten dream, a recognition. Maybe you saw a part of yourself in her story, or the woman you are becoming, or the woman you once buried. That if it resonated, don't keep it inside. Share it with a sister, a friend, a woman who needs to remember her strength, like this video. Comment with your truth. Subscribe to this channel, not from impulse, but from intention. Because when something touches the soul, the least we can do is let it echo, not just within us, but through us.